Welcome back, guys. I have another top cut at a cup to report. I got top four, and now you're probably thinking in your mind, Rahul, this top four probably doesn't do anything for you. You're right, it really doesn't. But I am going for this thing called the stipend. And so every quarter, what Pokemon does is the top 16 players in your individual region will earn a stipend to the next international championship. Now, from 5th to 16th place, that is 1,000 US dollars. And for a lot of people, that is a significant amount of money, especially when in most situations it'll cover the cost of flight and probably hotel at the very least for an international. Now, if you are in the top four, you earn something called a travel award. And if you're outside of region, I believe it's 3,500 US dollars. And if it's inside the region, it's 2,500 or maybe 2,000. But that's kind of like those top four is like the people who have been doing exceptionally well this quarter. For example, Callie White, she's gotten the top four and a finals at regionals and a bunch of cup wins. Cal Connor, a regional champion. Players like that who have been kind of popping off usually end up in those spots, and it'll come down to EYC anyway. So I figured I'd put myself in the best spot possible for the travel award, as I'm now in fifth for the stipend at over 600 points in this individual quarter. So I figured let's go to the cup nearby and try some decks that I've been testing on ladder. I've been basically just jamming a lot of stuff on ladder, and Gardevoir has become one of the decks that I think has vastly been agreed upon is probably one of the better decks in this format, especially when you can buy yourself a turn back with Badoo. You have cards like Cresselia to answer Dragapult early on. You have your double Monkey Dory, and some are even playing three Monkey Dory for the mirror and for Dragapult because it's so important that you need your two. Um, Copy of Manaphy for things that can snipe your bench like Lugia. You have Drifloon, Screamtail, as your usual suspects as attackers. And then you have Fluttermane, which makes its comeback in the form of an attacker for the mirror match, as well as a pretty good attacker into like Dragapult and just other random stuff. Because like the 90 is just like a good number, and so if you accelerate 3 energy and can attack with Screamtail, it's quite good into a lot of these random matchups. Getting down double Monkey Dory is quite crucial in a lot of games. Let's go through the rest of the list. 4 Artisan, 4 Iono is pretty staple and standard, I think, in a Gardevoir list. I have a Turo and one copy of Boss, I think, which is also pretty normal across the board. The Turo is something that's like okay, but you just kind of need it when you need it. I have three Buddy Buddy, three Ultra Ball, one Nest, and one Heavy for my search cards. I felt like that was completely fine because I have two Artisan as well. I think you have to go up on stadium count instead of playing like one Artisan. I think you have to play two because cards like Jamming Tower have become exceedingly more popular in a bunch of decks. Arcalodon, um, like just in general, like Jamming Tower has become more popular, and you need a way to actually bump it because if you can't, you just kind of lose the game. I have one copy of TM Evo and two Bravery Charm, as well as one Rare Candy. The Rare Candy was a last minute inclusion to try something out for the mirror match. Um, it didn't really do anything, so I think I would just make it a second TM Evolution if I was going to play this deck again. Just because every time I look through my deck, I was like, I really hope my TM Evo is not prized, and that's a really terrible feeling. So if you play two, it's like you're not putting on a 10% chance that you don't get to play the game half the time. Um, Two counter catchers, an unfair stamp. I chose unfair stamp as my ace spec of choice because I think it's really good in a lot of matchups, especially when you're Badoo locking and your opponents choose to like KO you. The Badoo a lot of the time, like they don't have an answer. Like if it's like Dragapult, Guardian or whatever, and they choose to KO your little chump attacker, whether it be Badoo, whether it be the card that you use TM Evo into, if you just stamp them early on, no deck can thin that fast in this format right now, besides maybe like Lugia. And you just put them in such an awkward spot where they have now two cards and a third that they're drawing for turn to work with compared to like what they would have had otherwise. Like if Ionoing to five doesn't have the same effect, but stamping them to two is significantly better than that. But I do think Secret Box is quite good. I think it's quite close because Secret Box is just an incredibly good consistency card and gets everything you need out of the deck for you. Um, so if you can Secret Box before anything else happens, maybe you're in a really good spot. So at the time being, it's like I think that Secret Box could be really good. But I'm leaning towards Stamp ever so slightly. I think those are the two best ace specs to play in Guardy. Um, I'll just wait for Henry Chow to prove me wrong and pull out some secret third one that I've never heard of in my life. Anyway, there's seven psychics, three darks. I think it's pretty standard for the energy package, two vessel, and two rod. I have no stretcher because I think that rod is just more utility across the board. Especially if you have to discard a rod early. Like if I'm playing one rod, one stretcher, and I have to discard my rod early, it's going to feel really bad later in the game. But I have to try to get like a whole monkey line back. In general, like if I had two rod plus a stretcher, maybe it'd be nice. But I just don't have spots for it. Like I'm playing everything I want to be playing, so I just don't have the space to put all that in. Anyway, that's my deck list. Let's jump into the tournament report. Show up to the cup. It's a 6 rounder, absolute banger. Don't really expect the 6 rounds. I kind of want to just go home at this point. Round one, I end up going against Arcalodon. We're both kind of bricking a little bit, but I end up breaking my break first, and Nate takes the first prize. He goes for the Dialga, takes 3 prize cards, and then I basically just blow up the Dialga, take a bunch. Like I take 2 knockouts early too with like a Cress. I won't plan on swinging for 110 with Cress because my board is so bricky. But I end up winning just the outright trade because I think as soon as like my deck, like I start when I get my Curlies, I start going. But if our Caledon's bricking, they're just bricking for like half the game. Um, so I end up taking that one over Nate. Round 2, I end up hitting Regidrago, which is a kind of a shock to see. And my opponent has like a pretty good start. They end up going to a Squawkabilly attack with Squawkabilly to set up their Drago. I end up going into Badoo pretty early on. I Badoo lock for a couple turns. They end up coming up eventually and taking a boss KO on my. I don't have Mana Fee down at this point in the game. So they end up taking a boss KO with Dragon Laser. And then I respond with a Gardevoir Monkey Dory knockout, and I already moved 30 preemptively. I had double Monkey Dory set up already, preemptively moved 30 to the other Regidrago on their bench. Um, and then they evolve that one. They get to use all their items. They get to attack me, but they don't get a one-shot here, which then lets me get the free one-shot back with double Monkey Dory move, plus Gardevoir because they didn't have a Goodra in their discard. And then the game is just effectively over at that point because I have checkmate on board no matter what happens. With a second Gardevoir and like effectively just whatever attacker they want to use, it just gets knocked out because I have double Monkey Dory and they have like their only one prizer on board was Cleffa at this point, so the game was just over. And then round 3, I end up hitting John. I end up, we just set up and I have a completely total brick, so I just look at my opening hand and I was like, yeah, you got it, man. Like, I don't want to play this one. He was playing Pulse today and I was playing Gardevoir. 2-1. Round 4, I end up hitting Lugia. And Lugia matchup should be pretty bad. I think it's close, actually. It's super, super close. And my opponent had to squawk away 5 energy turn 1, and they benched Ursaluna for some reason, which then made their board really awkward because they had Ursaluna and Luminion on the board. Ursaluna and Squawk on the board, which just I like looked and I was like, and they opened Minchino, so I was just like, well, they can only get one Lugia down at a time, so they can't be reading the wind. And I had ITME vote instead of Badooing, because I just figured it'd be better to get my setup going if they end up getting their hands going because I just want to have a response to it. Um, they just didn't do anything for 2 more turns, and I got basically like a free mulligan effectively, got to set up. And the game came down to like they did get down to like 2 prize cards, but I feel like those 2 prize cards were so impossible for them to take because they didn't have early enough board pressure to take stuff with hands, to take stuff with Wellspring, and they went for the Saw block on my Manaphy at the very end of the game. Or sorry, Greninja at the very end of the game because I already used my Turo. Um, and I had exactly enough psychic energies to continuously move damage off my board to one-shot Archeops and win the game. So I did have a chance of losing there, which is a little bit scary. Saw block is real, guys. Keep that in mind when you're playing against Lugia. Or actually don't if I'm playing Lugia. Just forget about it. Round 5, I played against Bolt, Raging Bolt, and my opponent played Luminia and Crispin, and they went for that turn 1 to attack with Slitherwing, going second, and they prime captured my lone Ralts, but I just didn't care because I went stamp them low, counter catcher up their Greninja, Badoo, and basically like get Poffin and stuff going again. And I took like 2 turns to set up after that, but while I was Badooing, their deck was just like useless. So in the process, I killed their Slitherwing with Monkey Dory damage. After I set my Gardevoir up, and then I knocked out their like Luminion that they benched, and then basically I went up 3 prize cards, and they got to go to Bolt, knock out my Gardevoir, go down to 3 as well, and then I went knock out their Greninja on the bench with Screamtail, um, and then they could have won with Briar, but they needed a Sada that turn to attack, and I knew that, so they went Sada, Catcher KO my Gardevoir, and then I just had Counter Catcher game. It's almost kind of close for no reason really, but that's probably because I went lone. Like I had 1 Ralts on the bench on turn 1 and it got knocked out, so happens. I did my last round with Gardevoir Mirror. Then I go into top 8. My top 8 opponent has a game loss due to a Decklist area. It was like a switch for a Poffin, which is like kind of silly, but whatever. They're playing Lost Box. They end up taking the first knockout on my Badoo. I end up going into Fluttermane instantly and stamp them to 2, and they completely break from there. I guess my opponent did not play Bundle in his deck, so even though he was nest balling for cards like other Comfies and Sandblasts and stuff, he never had a bundle to push my Fluttermane out of the active, which just let me put this Flutter in the active, stamp them to 2, and I think Flutter took like 4 prize cards by itself. So by the time my opponent was able to do anything, the game was over. And then top 4, I end up hitting John again. The first game, I win the flip and I opt to go second. He opens double Poffin, which is really bad for me. I go into Badoo, but I don't have like a strong start otherwise. And then he ends up getting into the first Dragapult, and I'm still like the curliest, so my board just gets blown up. Second game, I have like a super turbo brick, and I opt to go first this time because I want to see what happens just for like practice sake at this point. Um, don't go first. It feels really bad. And John got like a perfect start into turn two. I missed the Badoo too, so he got the turn two Dusclops. My curly is that I evoed and then just blow up my board with Dragapult, like Candy Dragapult, Tool. He also like the instant charge turn one, so he like basically set up like a perfect like million cards in hand on turn one, and I just like looked at my board and I was like, uh oh. So I got two out pretty quickly. I think Dragapult is a scary matchup for Gardevoir for sure, especially because Dragapult's probably more consistent as a deck. And then yeah, that's where my tournament run ends. Top four, Gardevoir is a cool deck. It's probably number three on my list of decks I play for EYC. The list is Lugia's pretty high up there for me. Then it's Dragapult, and it's this. If you guys want to check out my Lugia Masterclass, it is available to purchase. But otherwise, yeah, I'll be off to EYC soon, and we'll see where it takes us. So see ya. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I'll be back with another tournament report in 2 weeks from Japan, actually.